Hello, I'm Adam.
Hey, I'm Stella.
I'm Sophia.
And I'm Mitchell. And today we're speaking with Chris Goforth, head of Citizen Science from the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. Chris is also ecoEXPLORE's Entomology Science Mentor.
What inspired you to be a scientist? I just really like to learn about things that people don't know about yet. And so part of why I think it's very exciting to be a scientist is that you get to discover new things. Sometimes you're the first person in the world to have ever seen something, and I think that's really amazing. But I also just really love insects. I think insects are fascinating. There's so much we don't know about them still, and there's a lot of room to kind of follow what your passions are in entomology in particular. You can study the insect group that you like, you can study behavior, you can study how things are related to each other, you can study structures, there's all kinds of different things involved. And so you can kind of go the direction that you want to go and pick the things that you're interested in. And I think that's really exciting, getting to learn really great detail about the things that I'm personally interested in, but things that can also help the general public as well.
What makes dragonflies so different from other insects?
Well, there's a lot of things that make dragonflies different. So when they're immatures, they are aquatic, and the aquatic stage has this really cool mouth part that folds up under their heads. So if you've ever seen the Alien movies, you know, there's that little mouth that comes out of the bigger mouth of the alien, which is really cool. But dragonflies have this mouth part that's folded up under their head, and when something swims by in the water, it shoots out, and they use these little hooks on the end to grab the food and then pull it back to their face to chew them up, which is really cool. They're able to eat things like small fish and small frogs and tadpoles, things like that. So it's an insect eating an animal with a backbone. Usually it's the other way around. So I think it's really cool when insects get to turn that table around a little bit. And then dragonflies have a lot of really cool behaviors as adults that I really like. So a lot of people know that they're amazing flyers. They can fly backwards and upside down. They can hover. They can do a lot of things that a lot of other insects can't. And one of the reasons that they can do that is because their wing muscles are attached directly to their wings. In most insects, the wing muscles are attached to their thorax, and so they're pulling the whole thorax in and out to fly. But in dragonflies, the wing muscles are attached directly to the wings, so they can move all four of their wings independently of each other, and that allows them to do some of those acrobatic things that we see dragonflies doing, and I think that's super cool.
That is fascinating. Thank you.
Why is the dragonfly such an important insect? So, what would happen if the world was without dragonflies?
So one of the most important things I think for us as humans that dragonflies do is they eat a lot of other little insects. And so they eat things like mosquitoes and black flies and a lot of other biting insects that we don't necessarily like to have around us, and things that transmit diseases. And so having dragonflies means that we have fewer of those kind of disease transmitting fly species that like to bite us and suck our blood. But they also are really important kind of balancing organism in nature as well, so they help control population sizes of a lot of other things.
So they're sort of kind of like bats?
Yes, yeah, they eat a lot of the same kinds of things that bats do. They're just going to do it during the day and bats do it at night, so having the two of them together is great. Yeah, exactly.
What habitats do dragonflies normally live in?
So most people associate them with water, and so they lay their eggs in the water, and so you will see the dragonflies around the water a lot because they're mating and laying eggs in aquatic habitats, because the immatures and the eggs are usually aquatic. And so most people will see them there, but a lot of dragonflies, there's a lot of territoriality that's happening at ponds, and so there's a space that a male dragonfly takes up, and no other male can take that space unless they have a fight and that stronger male pushes them out. And so there's only so many spaces at a body of water for dragonflies, and all the other ones that aren't strong enough to get those spots have to go somewhere else. And so even though we see them at ponds a lot and we know to look for them at ponds, there's a whole lot of them that are other places. So you can find them flying over like fields, you can find them in forests, you can find them in lots of other places, over cars at this time of year, like fall. A lot of dragonflies flying over cars right now.
They're really aggressive?
They're not really aggressive to people, but they can be to other dragonflies, especially within their own species. And they're definitely aggressive towards other insects that are smaller than them because they're eating them. Yeah, got a nice insect flying around.
How do you study dragonflies? And what are the main tools you're going to be using to study these dragonflies?
It depends a little bit on what you want to study with them. So some people are going to study, how different species are related to each other, and so they're going to use very different kinds of things that I would use. I study behaviors, and so I honestly do a lot of observation, and so it's me just watching the dragonflies more than anything, and to watch them, some of the things that I'll use would be like video cameras or just regular cameras, just using my eyes is a lot of what I do. And so you watch things happen, you record what you see just on paper or on an iPad or something if you have a more sophisticated kind of thing. I tend to record things on paper. And so what I do is really low tech, have a camera, my own eyes, maybe a net to catch things every now and again, and a notebook, and that's pretty much what I need. But other people will have to have like DNA sequencing equipment, they'll have to have microscopes. A lot of people who study the aquatic stage, those immatures, are going to have special nets to get them out of the water. And so there's a lot of other equipment that other people use, and it just depends on what specifically you're studying and what kind of tools you need for that particular study.
Why do you like studying dragonflies? What's your main reason for doing what you do?
I have two reasons for why I like studying dragonflies. First is I just think dragonflies are amazing. They are so fun to watch. They are really hard to catch. Actually, I got interested in dragonflies in the first place because I was in 4-H and had to make a collection for my entomology project in 4-H, and no one had dragonflies in their collection, so I wanted to be the person that had dragonflies. And so I started catching them. And got to know their behaviors really well, because once you start catching them, you start to learn what they do. And I got really fascinated in dragonflies because of that. But I also really like dragonflies because even though they're a well-studied insect compared to a lot of others, there's still so many things we don't know. Like one of the things that I'm really interested in is there's a lot of species that are migratory, and so they're following some of the same pathways that like monarchs follow. One specific insect, the wandering glider, is found pretty much everywhere in the world because it can fly across oceans, and it has one of the longest animal migrations in the world in between India and Africa. It's about 10,000 miles, and so it's pretty impressive for a very small insect to be able to fly that far. And so we know that they do that, but we know so little about how it works, when it happens, exactly what kind of conditions you need to have that happen. And so there's still just so much we don't know about dragonflies and their behavior and how they work. And there's just so many questions to answer, and I think that's really exciting.
What is your favorite species of dragonfly, and what's it typically look like?
My favorite species is the wandering glider, and it's the one that migrates between India and Africa and does cross oceans. I just think it's amazing that an insect that's this wide is able to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. That's pretty spectacular. Like, I can't even imagine a human trying to cross the Atlantic Ocean under our own power, and having a very small insect do that is just amazing. They're about this wide, the wingspan, their bodies are about this long. They're kind of a bright yellow kind of color, and then have clear wings. And they're the ones that during the fall in North Carolina you're going to see flying over people's cars and over grassy fields, things like that. We have a whole lot of them moving through the state right now, and so you can see a whole lot of them in places you wouldn't expect them. So they're not going to be at those ponds, doing that territorial thing as much. They're specialists on little bodies of water and temporary bodies of water. Their immatures develop really quickly compared to a lot of other dragonflies, and so they're looking for little puddles and things. And so that's part of why they're looking at cars. They mistake cars for these little puddles, and so you'll see them over cars a lot. And then they're hunting over the fields.
What are some dangers to dragonflies?
Dangers to dragonflies?
Yes.
There are quite a few of them. One of the biggest ones is pesticide use. And so a lot of pesticides that will kill just insects generally are really dangerous to dragonflies as well. There's a lot of habitat loss as well. Humans don't really like the kinds of habitats that dragonflies enjoy because they breed mosquitoes. And so dragonflies eat a lot of mosquitoes. They're in the same kind of habitat you find mosquitoes. And so a lot of people are removing those kind of swampy, wet areas, and those take away the spaces that the dragonflies require to live. And then just increased urbanization. You have fewer places for these animals to live if we're taking away their ponds and their fields and the things that they need to survive. Although they're doing reasonably well adapting to that as well.
And what do we not know about dragonflies?
There's still so many things. I mentioned migrations. There's still so much we don't know about migrations in particular. They fly somewhere in the U.S. Like we know they're coming from like Canada, following the coasts and major rivers and things like that, but we don't really know where they go. We don't know if they all go to the same place like monarchs do, or whether they're all spreading out. We don't know if the same adult that flies south is the one that comes back north. Dragonflies only live about 5 weeks as adults at the most, and so it's thought that they're probably migrating, laying eggs, and then dying, and then a next generation is coming back, but we don't know that for sure. And so there's still so many things related to that in particular we don't know. And then I also study dragonfly swarming behavior, and we're trying to figure out how that behavior kind of benefits people, how it works, why it works, but they're really, really hard to study because you have to be in the right place at the right time to see a swarm. And so it's really impossible for just one person to study that. And so I have a citizen science project that I run, the Dragonfly Swarm Project, and people can send me stories of these swarms that they see so that I can have a lot more information to talk about what that behavior is, how it works, why it's important.
Wow, that's really cool. And to wrap it up, what can kids do to help dragonflies?
So the more information we know about which species live where, what they're doing, is really great. And there are only so many scientists in the world. There are a lot more non-scientists in the world. And if every one of you collected a little bit of data, that's a huge amount of data. I mentioned my swarm project. I've seen about 30 swarms altogether myself, but I've got over 6,000 observations because I opened that up to other people to share those stories with me. So that's a huge amount of data that I've been able to collect just by people telling me little short stories about things that they've seen. So participating in things like ecoEXPLORE is a really great way to help us collect more data in more places, and so that we can understand how these animals work a lot better.
Well, thank you for your time, Chris.
Thank you. To complete your Dragonfly badge for ecoEXPLORE, you are going to be finding a dragonfly, figuring out what it is, researching it, and drawing a picture of it in its habitat and sending it to me. I'm very excited to see your drawings and look forward to what you're able to observe.